Imagine if every young New Zealander unleashed their potential to change the world. What would it take to make that happen? Kia ora tātou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. My name's Guy. I grew up in the South Island on the West Coast in a little village called Granity. From a young age, I've always been pretty mischievous. I remember when I was about 3 or 4, swimming with the family up north, I had floaties on, flotation devices, and I decided to take them off while no one was looking. Jumped into this pool, sunk like a rock, straight to the bottom. 30 seconds had passed, no one noticed. 40 seconds, about a minute, my mum or dad must have realised, and luckily my dad swam over, rescued me, and I didn't drown. Great. Woo! So from a young age, my parents split up, and my mum, single mum, raised my 2 sisters and I. Massive respect to all of the mums out there for the incredible work that they do for bringing our children into this world. When I was 12, I got a surfboard, and I've never looked back. One of my favourite things to do was go adventuring and tour the coastline, surfing incredible waves. And that took me down to Dunedin to study. Through design and marketing, I used to get cameras out every weekend, making surfing and skating films with mates, putting on these massive film premieres and bars, getting too drunk and not being a very good role model for young people. But it was an amazing time. And it was about that time that I had one of those kind of formative experiences. I started to get a little bit more of a social conscience. I remember there was a guest lecturer, this dude who was touring New Zealand for the first time from the States. His name was Bill McKibben. He's the founder of 350.org, and it was there for the first time that I learnt about this thing called climate change. And as a young person, I found it pretty confronting. I found it pretty overwhelming. And I started asking, what could I do? You know, my passion was design and art and creativity. And I'd just gotten into a master's course. Fellow student Nick and I had a whole year to make a 25-minute film about anything of our choice. So we're just going to watch the trailer of that. That film was called Carving the Future.
Tahi tēnei kāmihi. Kia rangi nui e tūnei kia papotu ānuku e takoto nei. I'm just one person.
Together to talk about climate change, to look at the issue, to look at what we can do individually and as a crew to tackle the problem.
Let's just say they're not greeny, they're not hippie or anything, but they like what they do. It's something different for kids to get out and do hands-on stuff. Like, you don't have to be a hippie to plant a tree.
You are one person.
Woo! Woo!
So be one person.
You know, like, we can actually make a difference.
So that was just the trailer. The full film's 25 minutes. And the film went on to do some pretty amazing things. So the stories of these 4 passionate young New Zealanders who were stepping up to take action and make a difference on something that was important to them. The film ended up winning the Colorado International Film Festival. It was one of 3 finalists in the world for the BBC's Best Newcomer Award. It's been screened in over 50 countries around the world to thousands of people, but by far my favourite part was taking that film and touring it around Aotearoa, New Zealand, into schools and communities, and seeing how powerful film could be as a tool to bring people together, to be a catalyst for conversation and action. And I wondered, you know, that was the stories of 4 young New Zealanders. Imagine how many other young New Zealanders are out there doing all kinds of remarkable things to make the world a better place. And I got a little frustrated by often the really grim and negative picture that the media paints of our young people. And I thought I could change that. So I set up an organisation called Inspiring Stories, and for the last 4 years I've poured my heart and soul into this. So we kicked off running workshops around New Zealand, connecting young people, giving them skills in storytelling and filmmaking, running hundreds of workshops literally nationwide, from Stewart Island in the south to the far north. And out of that we set up a national challenge, so themed young Kiwis making a difference, personal stories about young people taking action. And we've had all kinds of entries into that competition, from young people volunteering in their community, young people running for council, young people making kayaks out of plastic bottles and adventuring down the Wanganui River. It's been incredibly diverse. And again, one of the great parts of that is taking these stories and sharing them in schools and communities nationwide. So storytelling is powerful, right? Stories literally shape our attitudes, our behaviour, our identity. Stories define who we are as a nation, how we perceive ourselves as New Zealanders. But stories alone won't change the world. We need action, right? So what can we imagine in terms of really being able to build capability and confidence amongst our young people to make them more effective at making a difference in their community? So one of the things that we've done is create this big national event called Festival for the Future, which really has two aims. One is to celebrate a really diverse range of youth-led Kiwi innovation. So bringing young people from right across the board, from arts, from creative sector, from business, from science, tech, youth, education, right across the board, and giving young people a chance to share their passion, their projects, and their vision for Aotearoa New Zealand. And the second key part is around ideas and skills development. So we're lucky enough now to be working with some really significant national organisations who are keen and passionate to support young people to take their ideas to the next level. Organisations like the Kia World Class New Zealand Network, Leadership New Zealand, Sustainable Business Council, Akina, loads of organisations who are championing, who are enabling our young people to stand on the shoulders of giants to make their dreams happen. So through this, right, so an event can be incredible. A simple event can change a person's life. But what happens after the hype? What happens after the buzz, right? What happens in the space in between? So it strikes me that in New Zealand, we have some fantastic structures set up to support high growth commercial enterprise, but gaps in supporting young people who might be slightly more passionate about growing ideas which might be more around social impact or environmental impact. So what would it take if we started to do a better job of weaving those different sectors together? So we created this thing called Live the Dream. Live the Dream was New Zealand's first social enterprise accelerator program. So we put a call out, we built the brand, we did this thing on less than $1,000, and we had 50 young people from right across New Zealand submit their ideas for a better New Zealand, assessing those ideas based on their potential to generate social, environmental, economic impact. So 7 youth-led ventures went through this first-time program, and I just want to tell you a couple of stories of those. Lindsay, Cade, Leander, and Tish. These guys were students at Otago in Dunedin. In 2012, they took on Dunedin's worst voted student flat, the Shit Show Chateau. You can imagine it, right? It's a dive. So they worked in partnership with their landlord to transform the shitty flat into a low-energy, livable villa. And they did it. They had an amazing time. They got loads of media exposure. But at the end of the day, it was just one flat. So coming through Live the Dream, they were asking, is there a way that we could do this for more flats in Dunedin or even further? And what they've done is created a website. It's called Rate My Flat, which empowers tenants to rate their flat based on a number of different variables. So how energy efficient is it? How well insulated is it? How responsive is the landlord? Simple idea, right? But it's in a landlord's best interest to have a good rating. And you can imagine at scale, this thing actually starts to become a database of the health of all of the tenable housing stock in New Zealand nationwide. And Lindsay, Cade, Leander, and Tish are working with some fantastic mentors. They're working with Housing New Zealand, they've got mentors at Trade Me, ICA, lots of different organisations who all want to see this thing fly. They had over 1,000 sign-ups in O Week, and they're still cranking this thing. So we could run Live the Dream largely because I believe there's a time in our lives where our ability to take risk is significant, right? Especially amongst young people. And in New Zealand, across our tertiary institutions are largely empty over summer. And all of these different regions have all of this expertise, commercial expertise, social, environmental. So something like Live the Dream could actually be rolled out across every single campus nationwide. And young people especially have time on their hands over summer. So that's the scope for scale. And I'm very excited to announce that one of the partners for that project is backing us to roll that out on the 5 major campuses nationwide moving forward. So it's really exciting. So we know we have these big, complex challenges on our hands, right? And we know that government alone doesn't have all the answers. We know that business alone doesn't have all the answers, nor does communities themselves. So more than ever, we need to be finding and developing the skills and capabilities of people who can weave these different sectors together, to dream, to create solutions to these big issues of our time. So here's the big opportunity. There's 1 million young people in our country aged 13 to 30. That's a quarter of the population in New Zealand. What's the ecosystem that we can imagine designing that would literally enable us to grow a generation of young New Zealanders to change the world? Let's think about a young person's journey from perhaps being disengaged or apathetic to catalyst. Okay, I want to make a difference. Where do I start? What are the skills and capabilities and confidence that I might need to develop? And then if they've got ventures, what does it take to take those ventures from idea to proof of concept to scale? So that's our opportunity in New Zealand. Internationally, for example, in Australia, there's an organisation called the Foundation for Young Australians operating with a similar mandate, doing this stuff at scale with a $50 million endowment fund, 70 full-time staff, independent of government. We need to be thinking at that level for Aotearoa New Zealand. So the big question is, are we up for it? And the challenge for you guys as an audience is, what's your part in enabling us to build this movement? Kia ora.